Show. Right.
We're going to get rolling. Welcome into Inside Carolina's live late post game because nobody was trying to do a post game at 3 o'clock in the morning, especially when my guest for the first time this year, Dewey Burke, you're on the East Coast. So, yeah, good morning to you, man. I know you got a chance to watch the game this morning.
I did. I watched it this morning. I couldn't make it. I guess I'm getting old. I think 15 years ago, I probably would have stayed up for that one, but didn't have it in me.
Absolutely. I stayed up as long as I could. I watched most of the first half, and I said, yeah, I'll watch the rest in the morning. It wasn't going to be – I'd rather have gone to bed then and had a good day today, especially with all this going on, Carolina football game and all that. But
busy day.
Let's get right into it, Dewey. We'll talk about this game, and then I kind of want to get your thoughts overall since it is the first time we've talked. Carolina has a way of starting out fairly well, getting a little sluggish in the first half, and then coming out on fire in the second half. Same thing happened against Hawaii. What did you see from your standpoint for this team last night?
Yeah, I thought we were really good in spurts. Defensively, I thought we started the game fairly strong, and we'll get into it and talk about giving up too many points in the paint, and just generally we're a smaller team than we've maybe ever been. But you look down and you see 38% shooting. You're overall happy with the defensive effort. We started slowly offensively. RJ hits that three to get us going. But it's going to be an interesting year. As you say, it's the first time we've talked, and we're going to be very perimeter oriented. We're going to rely on the 3-point shot. And it's the most concerning things for me are, again, the points in the paint and then getting out rebounded by 13. I mean, that's such a rarity for our teams of the past 20 something years. You just don't typically look down and see that. We did win the free throw battle. We've talked for years about we like to make more than the other team attempts. And, I think we did that, or we're close to doing that. As I look at it here, yeah, we did. So, things that we can try and solve, and then there are things that are just facts that aren't going to change, and we're undersized, and that's going to be something that I feel like we're going to talk about all season long.
Yeah, it was interesting. And, when I saw the rebounding numbers, it felt like it was lopsided in the first half and then it evened out a little bit. But Carolina still, like you mentioned, 40-27 deficit on the boards. And that surprised me more than anything, given how they rebounded at Kansas. Because if you'd have told me they would have out-rebounded Kansas 2 weeks ago or whenever it was, I'd have thought you were crazy. But if you'd have told me they would have been out-rebounded by 13 against Hawaii, I'd have said you're crazy. That, to your point, Hubert Davis stresses rebounding more than anything else. He talks about it nonstop and about how it's heart and desire and all that. But sometimes, Dewey, other teams just have big dudes that can play, and North Carolina's going to have to contend with that. My question to you on this is not that Carolina's small, but that Carolina's bigs didn't really rebound the ball well last night. And that, for me, is more concerning than the size aspect of it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, your starting 5 can't have 5 rebounds, and your starting 4 can't have 1. I mean, for Jalen and Withers to combine for 6 rebounds when we're used to, and obviously we were spoiled the last 5 years with Armando, but for you're typically used to somebody having 10 plus and somewhat regularly, it felt like anyway, having individual games of 15 to 20 rebounds, and then your starting front court has 6. It's not good enough. And so rebounding is desire and effort at times, but it's also size matters. And I know Jalen is a tall person and has long arms, but he's not a banger and prefers to be more perimeter oriented. I think if you asked him, and likes to shoot the ball, face-up guy. He doesn't mind shooting threes. And so we just, from a personnel perspective, We're just not as big as we've been. I think Lubin has a chance to continue to be helpful, but you look out there and God, he looks like he's 6'6" to me. I mean, he's not that big. So I think it's going to be a theme all year. We're going to have to win in different ways. The ability to knock down shots and defend the 3-point line is going to be important for this team, because I just don't think second chance points are going to be a big part of our scoring capability. And one of the things Coach Williams used to always say is some of the best threes you can take are off an offensive rebound and a kick out. The defense is scrambling. They're not matched up. It's kind of an unsettled situation. And a lot of times an offensive rebound and 1 or 2 passes lead to the best 3 you can take. I would suspect we have less and less of those going forward. So we are who we are. We didn't get a big in the portal that's going to be as impactful as maybe we all hoped. And so it's going to be a different Carolina team, but we are very strong on the perimeter. I mean, you look out there at the 5-6 guys that we've got with the 3 starters plus the 2 freshmen off the bench and Cade Tyson, if he continues to get more comfortable, we should have the ability to play really, really fast, which is something I am very encouraged by so far is our pace, obviously. And the fact that we are going to be difficult to guard on the perimeter. I mean, you look at Trimble, Elliot, and the way he's playing, and we need to get into that and how he's finishing at the rim. And then obviously RJ, those 3 guys are hard to guard. We're undersized, but we're fast and we're hard to guard. So we have to play to that. I think we need to play even faster, because in the half court, we're just going to struggle to rebound the basketball, and it's going to be a theme.
Yeah, let me stay here on rebounding, because I definitely want to go to those guards, specifically Elliot Cadeau, as he is the title of this show. But in the rebounding aspect, I mean, North Carolina's always had superior size, or mostly superior size. So when you don't have superior size, and I understand heart, desire, and all that kind of stuff, but is there something that you can do coach-wise or scheme-wise, to steal the football terms, to help that? Or is it just something you're just going to have to deal with it? Or is it got to be 5 guys rebounding on every possession?
It's
And
that.
then but then you counter that, where if Carolina's got to spend 5 rebounding, you reduce the transition and you're back into the trouble you talk about with the half court offense. So what's the challenge?
It's harder to play with pace when you have to have such an emphasis on all 5 guys boxing out. And not that, listen, anytime I ever played and was in practice with Coach Williams, you never didn't emphasize 5 guys box out, 5 guys make sure you get the ball. We didn't have any scheme or discussion about guys leaking out before you had the defensive rebound. It was never discussed, ever. Right? His demand was secure the rebound, and then you must sprint to offense. And a lot of times our offensive emphasis in practice was sprint to offense. Well, that only happens after you secure the defensive rebound. But I do think it's a bigger commitment for 5 guys, because even if it's subconscious, you know that you could rely on, generally speaking, Armando was getting the rebound, right? I mean, you know that guys felt that way. And we just don't have that security blanket anymore. And so RJ, for his size, is actually a very good rebounder. And I think has proven that over 4+ years. But it's going to be by committee. The guards have to be willing to not only check out, but then go and dig the ball out of the paint when it bounces around if it's not a clean rebound. We truly have to have a different level of commitment to the team rebounding aspect, because we just don't have a glass cleaner. We flat out don't. And so can that impact transition? Absolutely. Long rebounds, though, because the game has transitioned into shooting so many threes. Coach Williams always talks about long shots equal long rebounds. And so long rebounds should generally go to more perimeter players. So that's where somebody with the athleticism and the quickness of a Seth Trimble should be able to gravitate towards those potential defensive rebounds, and then we can run. So, maybe an offset of the fact that we're smaller is that the game is different, that you shoot way more perimeter shots. So those are longer rebounds that guards can be in play for, versus, there aren't many Hunter Dickinsons out there. There aren't any Baycots out there. So teams shoot a lot more perimeter shots, longer rebounds we should be able to run. But that getting out rebounded by 13 to Hawaii hopefully is an outlier, but that's an alarming stat for me to look down at. when that's a, mid-major team. That's not, I mean, the teams we're about to play next week, they're going to have much better size, much more athleticism and size. What's that going to look like? But you make the Kansas point, we out rebounded them. So we'll see where we end up, but I feel it will be a theme.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be a theme for Hubert Davis constantly, and the players mentioned that in the postgame. Talking with Dewey Burke here on the Inside Carolina postgame show, Johnny T-shirt and Congruity, our sponsors. Dewey, you mentioned the three guards, Cadeau, Davis, and Trimble, and I'd be remiss if I don't start with Elliot Cadeau. I mean, Hubert Davis said in the preseason, you're not going to recognize Elliot because he's gotten so much better. The way he gets downhill, and we talk a lot about contact balance when it comes to football, like a running back, like a Marion Hampton contact balance.
Remarkable.
Elliot Cadeau's got as good contact balance as anybody when he's finishing around the rim. Now, he hits the floor way too many times for my comfort because you don't want to see him get hurt. But when he's in the air, I mean, he's as good as he's been at North Carolina for a while, Dewey.
What's interesting is, so I sat here and watched the game with my father-in-law, who's been watching Carolina games for 20 years now, right? I mean, since I started dating his daughter in 2006, right? So he's been watching games for a long time. And we're sitting there watching, and Elliot had that spurt in the second half where he finished at the rim with the left. And I paused it and backed it up. And I said to him, I said, watch his ability to be going full speed and just jump and then figure it out later, is what I said to him. So he's so gifted and athletic and strong that he is going downhill so quickly, and he knows he can elevate purposely seeking contact, and then I'm going to figure it out in the air, left, right, off the glass, not get fouled. My father-in-law's response was, wow, I remember when Ty Lawson used to do that. Right. And so this is a similar stature in terms of body type to me. I actually think that Elliot is a little smoother in how he moves. Ty was so fast, but a little more kind of bull in the china shop, and I should know, trying to guard that dude in practice. But he reminds me of that from a body control perspective. Underrated ability to elevate. Both Ty and Elliot could really get off the floor, and then just so strong and balanced in the air to pick a hand and finish, absorb contact. Yeah, really impressive. And I think the biggest thing for me is this is a confident kid, right? I mean, he believes. And even though I don't think he made a three last night, if I'm correct, he only shot 0 for 1, but he's shooting the ball better. That's going to give you confidence. He's leading. He's communicative. But man, in the open floor, and one of them was kind of semi-transition, more half court. When he came down, crossed over left to right, went behind the back, into the paint, absorbed the contact, and finished left. That was elite. I mean, that was high level ability at the rim. And so it's brilliant to see, because all it does is take pressure off of RJ. You know, if he's going to be able to be a 15 to 18 point scorer, continue to be at least a threat from the perimeter. We all know about his gifts passing the ball. He's also been disruptive defensively. He's picking pockets and being aggressive on that side. He needs to stay out of foul trouble. But the freshman to sophomore leap that we have seen a lot in Carolina point guards, right? I mean, you think about Joel Berry, you think about Marcus Page. Elliot obviously struggled at times last year. There have been a lot of guys that in that second year in the system, understanding what the expectations are, understanding how to get people involved and also hunt their own. He's been really solid. So it's going to be fun to watch him this week against elite guard play in Maui and see how he plays.
Yeah, I mean, just to see him, and you mentioned the confidence aspect of it. I mean, there were times last year where he appeared to have none, especially shooting the ball from deep. And he, 7 of 8 last night, 17 points, missed that only 3 you mentioned. And just his ability, 4 assists, 1 turnover, his ability to change the game. And I know that Coach Davis will push back on questions about the offense just looks better with Elliot on the floor, but it does. And to your point, it takes a ton of pressure off RJ. So let's talk about RJ here. I mean, a lot of people are fretting that he's struggled so far. Your thoughts there? Is he pressing? Is there pressure on him? I mean, he had 18 points last night, and I'll freely admit that was the quietest 18 points I can remember seeing. But is it a concern at this point? Or is it just one of those things where you got to get it going? I mean, it takes a minute to get it started.
Yeah, not a concern yet. Not a concern yet. I think he may be putting pressure on himself. I actually don't think he's forcing it. I felt, especially when Hawaii went zone, there were a number of times when he could have just ripped it, even 3-4 steps behind the line. Like I was yelling at the screen, like, shoot it, shoot. You know, in terms of shot quality, a mediocre shot quality attempt by RJ, a lot of times is going to be a better shot than a wide open or great shot from some of the other people. That's how much confidence, at least I have, in him and his ability and the body of work over the last 4 years. So he probably is pressing a touch. You know, the weight of expectations is real. I mean, look, we all remember even Tyler coming off of a junior season where he was the National Player of the Year. He pressed a little bit to meet the expectations of what you've already done. And so I'm sure there's a little bit of that. I'm not worried yet. I think we also all remember how much Marcus Page struggled as a senior after a brilliant junior season. So that can happen. My hope would be one of these games coming up, he explodes and has his 30-point night, makes 5 or 6 threes on 8 or 9 attempts, and then he's off to the races. So I'm sure he's putting pressure on himself, but I do not think he is pressing. He's not shooting it just to shoot it. I think that he should actually be a little more aggressive on the offensive end and hunt his shot, especially if a team goes zone. If a team goes zone and he's got a glimmer, for me, it needs to go up because we don't have the ability to throw the ball inside and get somebody with their back to the basket to get an easy bucket. It's against the zone. The ball has to move. And if there's an open shot, he needs to take it. So for me, even a little more aggressive would be nice to see.
Yeah. And then someone in chat, Travis in chat, says would like to see Carolina be less dependent on RJ. I think they have thus far this year.
Yeah.
And one of those guys that stepped up is Seth Trimble. I mean, we know the story. You jump in the portal, realize that it's Carolina. You might want to stick around at Carolina, but not only that, Dewey. He's another one that looks like a different guy. When we saw him and Elliot in that Alabama game in the tournament, those guys were dejected. Those were season-ending games. They were down and out, and they both come back. I think Seth's growth coming into this season is probably, if I had to put one, it'd probably be the story number one for me.
And what I love about Seth's story, it's anti everything we see in not just college basketball, but college sports today, right? What we see today is, oh, I'm not happy with my minutes or how I played or how I'm being used. I'm just entering the portal and leaving. And I know he did do that, but then whoever spoke to him and his inner circle that sat and had conversations, the decision was, I'm actually not going to leave. I'm going to stay and I'm going to go to work. And it is very evident the kind of summer he had in terms of skill development. That's the way it used to be, right? It was like, if you were going to transfer, you knew you had to sit out, and I'm not advocating for that, but you knew you had to sit out. So it's like, if I'm either going to transfer and sit out, or I'm going to stay here and I'm going to go to work, and I'm going to get much better. So the coaches have no choice but to play me. If you would have told me last March that Seth Trimble would be starting at the 3 and not one of the 2 freshmen, would you have believed me?
No,
you wouldn't have. But he's playing as if he obviously earned that. And there's no free lunches at Carolina, right? He's obviously played well enough all summer, all fall leading into the season that he earned the starting spot. We know he's disruptive defensively. We know that he's elite in transition and athletically. But that under out of bounds play where he came off a rub screen and caught and ripped a 15-footer, he would not have even shot that last year. Never mind made it. I don't think he would have even attempted it. And so the confidence that he has to take what is analytically a low percentage shot, mid-range, and just rip it, to me, speaks volumes about the work. And so I'm probably as proud of him as I am of anybody on this roster. Elliot, the same thing. But Elliot was a 5-star. He was elite. We saw flashes. Seth Trimble, this guy's ripping threes off the bounce, off the catch. He's finishing transition, right hand, left hand. He's disruptive defensively. I think he did the work, and I think it's awesome.
Indeed. And you mentioned the two freshmen, and I'm going to throw Cade Tyson into this. He's not a freshman, but he's new on the team. Let's talk about these three guys before we get out of here. And this is Dewey Burke on Inside Carolina's late post game. Just for programming purposes, folks, we'll be doing Maui post games. We'll figure out who's on the show, but those are not going to be too terribly late. So we'll figure that out after the games, not the next morning, but after the games. But Dewey, let's talk about Ian Jackson, Drake Powell, and Cade Tyson, and you can take whichever one you want first. I've been impressed with Powell's ability to stuff the stat sheet. Ian Jackson, when the game slows down for him, he's shown the ability, and then Cade Tyson stepped up. And I think for me, Cade Tyson's ability to take the ball to the hole and have some success maybe helps him get started a little better than he has so far. But your take on the three?
Yeah, I can knock all three out quickly. I think, Cade, I think, is starting to understand the level that he's at now. I would say no matter where you play, what level, what conference, shooters can shoot. The stats don't lie. The kid can shoot. I think he maybe fully wasn't aware of the level he was going to be at night in, night out. I think the Kansas game was indicative, right? It didn't appear that he was quite ready for that moment. I think he's gradually getting there. This week will be an interesting test on, number one, how many minutes he plays, but when he does play, can he stay within himself and not get sped up? I think that's part of it. He got so sped up by the moment and the stage that it is to play at Carolina. So hopefully he will settle in. But he can shoot. He's got good size. I agree with you. A couple takes to the basket were encouraging, but we need him to be able to knock down open shots. When he's on the floor alongside maybe RJ and Elliot, eyes are on them. He should get a lot of open catch and shoot looks. And we need him to do what he's done, which is shoot above 40%. That's very important. For the freshmen, we all are hopeful to see them play more and more minutes as they get comfortable. Ian Jackson, in the open floor, his explosiveness, he's showed the ability to knock down some outside shots. Comfort will come with time. But hopefully coming off the bench as a quasi sixth man, if he can get you, eventually to that, call it 11 to 14 points, that would be huge to be able to rely on. And then Drake, obviously, on really both ends of the floor, but especially defensively, his length, his ability to block shots and be disruptive appears to be very impactful. So hopefully those guys continue to get more and more minutes. But it's going to be hard because of the three guys in front of them on the perimeter. Obviously small with Drake at the 4, which is a way we can be, very athletic and run. But look, Elliot, RJ, and Seth are going to play a lot of minutes. And so those guys are going to have to play better in order to get more minutes. It's quite simple. And I hear all the stuff about Duke plays all their freshmen. They start them. Those guys play major minutes and everything. But that's fine. That sounds good on paper. But I don't even think over there they would start those guys just because. The people who start and the people who play the most minutes earn the minutes. And so the freshmen have to continue to play better in practice to earn more minutes.
Yeah, and I think it takes some pressure off of them as well to have guys in front of them that can play. Somebody in the chat mentioned, I believe is Anthony mentioned in chat, and 10 for 10 from the three of them on foul shots. So that's a good deal there. Dewey, anything left? Carolina, Maui, Monday night. Dayton's got some size. Dayton's got some athletic ability. Everybody points to the 3 in the top 5 and 4 in the top 10 in this field, but Dayton's one of those teams that's always trouble. Last thoughts from you before we get out of here.
Yeah, I think every team in the tournament's good, even the unranked ones. So it should be a really good test, and they're going to challenge us on the backboard. I really would like to see Jalen Washington step up and be a bigger presence. He needs to be more physical. He needs to demand the ball on the post. He needs to work harder in establishing himself to even get a post touch. We're hardly throwing the ball in there. And, part of that is on the perimeter players, maybe not looking as much, but part of it is about doing your work early to establish post position. And we've been so spoiled over the years for guys that were just so big and strong and dominant in establishing post position, all the way back to to Sean May and to Tyler, but all the way through all the bigs we've had, and including Armando, they demanded the ball in the post and were exceedingly physical in establishing position. Jalen Washington has not shown the ability to do that yet. And so I'd like to see him demand the ball, even if he ends up turning and facing up and shooting a 10, 12 footer, which he's very capable of doing. Demand the ball in there, because when the ball goes in, it occupies the eyes of the defense, and then good things can happen off the ball with movement and cutting. The ball's got to go in there, but if he doesn't establish himself, they're just flat not going to throw it in there, and the ball's going to be on the perimeter.
Yep. And eventually, especially when teams are going to play zone, you got to force them to collapse on a big. And Jalen Washington has shown some ability, but yeah, you're right. He's not a traditional post, so Carolina's just going to look different this year. Dewey, it's always a pleasure. I know, this one was a late one, but it was good for us to get it done today rather than last night. And hopefully we'll talk again soon, my friend.
We will. And thanks to everybody in the chat.